Hey everyone, welcome to Civil Offense. My name is Ahmed Mlih, and today we're going to be talking about grifters, poor leadership, and building new organizations within the liberty movement. And today's guest is Ezra Wyrick, and he's somebody who both surprises and inspires longtime activists within the freedom-oriented spaces because he's 18 years old, and he's the chief editor of the Mises magazine, as well as the new communications director of Liberty Youth Coalition. Ezra, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Is there anything you would like to add to that description of yourself?
I think you covered all the bases.
Yeah. I know you also have a Substack where you do some of your own writing.
I do.
What do you talk about on there?
Politics, economics, justice, current events. I don't write there as much as I would like to because I'm usually busy. But when I get the opportunity, I push out an article every now and then, like monthly, usually on a monthly basis.
Well, great. I'm glad I was able to describe you accurately. So anyway, just some announcements. Go to ahmedmlih.com and sign up for my email list for the latest updates. We have Civil Offense merch at etsy.com/ZBigDogZ. That's ZBigDogZ. Check out Civil Offense on Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And remember to like, comment, and share the show. And, you know, that applies to you as well, Ezra. All of those things, every single one to the last digit of that. But anyway, I did want to start by asking, what are some of the organizations that you think stick out as not really moving libertarianism forward?
Not really moving libertarianism forward. Well, I mean, if I had to pick some organizations that, well, I think it's important to make the distinction that most organizations within the libertarian movement are perfectly okay. They're dedicated to spreading the message of liberty, but some don't spread the message of liberty in ways that we would like. I mean, I could mention the Cato Institute, and for the most part, I think Cato is fine. The problem is that being DC based and having that influence, as opposed to something like the Mises Institute, which is in middle of nowhere, Auburn, Alabama. I think that was intentional, by the way. I think that there is definitely some influence there that does not need to be in a libertarian-oriented organization. I think we could talk about some of the recent articles that have been, pushed out from Reason magazine. Some misdirection over there, and even for the most part, Reason magazine is a fantastic publication. I think that Ronald Reagan had this whole motif that you don't speak ill of another Republican. Well, I have kind of a spin on that. I won't speak ill of another libertarian unless they are actively, undermining the movement. But I will say that there are some things that I would like to see changed in some organizations that are prominent in the libertarian sphere.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that. The DC thing, there's only so much room for libertarianism there because they try to appeal to the politicians up there, and there's only so much you can do doing that. I think it does water down the message, and exactly. I think it's just clear that happens when you're up there. One example of this, I have a friend, Garen Jones, who comes on the show often. And while we were up in DC, we actually went to the Cato Institute. Vice President David Bowes was speaking there. And we were asking him, Garen actually had been the one asking him about counter economics. And David Bowes, who was at the time talking about creating more of a moderate liberal coalition within politics to, in his words, privatize the post office and maybe do a little bit more than that. But that was about it. He's like, if the taxes are like at a 5 to 10% rate and I can't really argue them down anymore, I'll be okay, right? So, but Garen asked him about counter economics, to which he replied, and he gave some example of it, and he's like, I'm just not really focused on that. I think politics is, more of about like finding people you can agree with and kind of like rationally doing this or whatever. But it seemed like he was a little bit perplexed at first, or stumped, I would say, like with that, and he was just kind of like, what do you mean by that? And it wasn't really like something he was able to address like right away. So I don't know. That was just something that, like, I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, I don't know how efficient this is going to be if this is the way you're thinking. And then also I know they had that like analyzing vaccine mandates from a libertarian perspective thing. And people were criticizing them for saying like, Cato, you should probably have a stance that's anti-vaccine mandate. I mean, I know Cato put out a some sort of release where they said, you know, we actually don't take a stance on this issue particularly. We let our people like take their stances. But it seems like if you're going to be a libertarian think tank, you would want to take the libertarian stances, or else what are you really standing for?
Agreed.
Yeah.
I know there were some people at Reason, if I'm not mistaken, that tried their darndest to make the libertarian case for vaccine mandates during the COVID pandemic, and I was not on board with that at all. That is just complete misdirection. It has no place in our movement.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think Reason a bit of an issue. Like, it's not that every single thing they put out is bad or something. I'm not making that claim. Yeah, there's stuff that helps educate people on libertarianism, but I think some of their other than just like, you know, maybe their take's not perfectly aligning with it, but I think in some ways they just have inefficient priorities. For example, because they just recently, I think this was maybe in the past month or something, they put out a piece about destigmatizing sex work, you know, so-called sex work, right? And it's like, okay, yes, under the libertarian framework, this sort of thing wouldn't be, you know, there would be no coercion involved or force to stop it. But it's more of like, what exactly is the reason for prioritizing this now of all times? What exactly is the issue in you know, just fighting for a different cause at the moment?
Well, I come from the perspective that there is a fine line between decriminalization and destigmatization. I think that this kind of rhetoric, destigmatize prostitution, destigmatize drug addiction, it's fine to decriminalize, and that is something that we should absolutely do. But to remove stigma away from things that are harmful to not just to individuals, but to society, I don't think that's helpful rhetoric, because people, particularly on the right, already look at libertarians and think, what a bunch of, libertine nuts. And that is not the perspective that we want to give. That's not the impression that we want to give. And that's not the right messaging to have. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the correct take on this one, just because it's not really unlibertarian to say, well, I don't want it to be something commonly accepted, you know, and very everywhere I look in society. I don't want it disseminated everywhere.
The goal of libertarianism is not to take any particular stance on any issue or to promote or not promote anything. The goal of libertarianism is simply to promote liberty, to promote maximum human liberty and minimum government interference. There is no other job. We have no business taking stances in support of or against any social element.
For sure. And so with that, I think that sort of covers some of the grievances that are pretty justified within spaces that, you know, maybe push libertarianism in certain ways, but they have their issues, and who knows what sort of balance you're going to see when it comes to actually getting things to move and progress. But I wanted to ask, you know, since you are involved with some of the newer organizations, and I say organizations just because there's a couple facets to it, but I wanted to ask, what are Liberty Youth Coalition and Mises Magazine?
So the Liberty Youth Coalition came about as a result of some misdirection at the top of YAL. And first of all, let me just stress that Young Americans for Liberty is a fantastic organization with a lot of fantastic people, great activists, and people that I respect and people that I consider friends. That being said, YL's leadership, particularly the CEO, Lauren Daughtery, are not on board with the ideal or the stated direction of YL. Therefore, there has been something of a shakeup after this has happened, but Lauren Daughtery and her cronies in leadership essentially tried to take over the organization in a way and kind of purge some of the more radical, non-politically correct people from the organization. An organization that was previously known as Students for Ron Paul, that was known for radical libertarian activism. And Lauren Daughtery is a DC think tank gal. And that's not my words. That's how she was described to me by someone who was fired by her. And she has been involved in DC think tanks, and she understands how think tanks are supposed to work, and she wants to put that Washington think tank mantle or that Washington think tank persona onto Young Americans for Liberty, which is a students' organization that is not politically correct in the least. Libertarianism, voluntarism, anarcho-capitalism, whatever term you choose to use to define yourself, no matter what you call it, libertarianism, classical liberalism, it is not politically correct. In fact, it is the exact opposite of politically correct. So you cannot place a politically correct mantle and a politically correct label on something that is not politically correct. And I came to understand the misdirection at YAL in leadership. But I also don't want that to seem like I don't, particularly like YAL or the people at YAL. But that being said, the Liberty Youth Coalition was founded, I believe it was founded as Mises Youth. It was founded by Emmanuel Ruiz, who was, obviously one of the ones that was purged from Young Americans for Liberty during this time period. And obviously being, deeply believing in liberty and being deeply dedicated to libertarian principles, he started a new organization. And the difference between Young Americans for Liberty and the Liberty Youth Coalition is that while Young Americans for Liberty focuses almost entirely on the campus aspect, aside from their activism in relation to elections, they're canvassing for candidates. YAL has very little focus on the community basis, and the Liberty Youth Coalition is community focused. We are campus focused in that we want to have chapters on college campuses. We want to have students involved with our organization, but we are not exclusively a student and or campus oriented organization.
Right. So asking more about that, where exactly are the differences, like more particularly when you talk about politics, getting involved with that? Because I know YAL does have the Operation Win at the Door, and you were mentioning this a little bit, and you guys are saying you're more community oriented. Could you sort of like lay out what exactly that means when it comes to politics, what your differences are?
So we here at the Liberty Youth Coalition believe that libertarians, if we are to have this individualistic mindset, and we are to believe in individualism, then we should also embrace mutual aid. So we believe that a great way that libertarians can reach out, particularly young libertarians and libertarian student activists, can reach out to their community and so the community can hear what they have to say on a number of issues, is to participate in mutual aid, volunteering, working at homeless shelters, giving to charity, working at food banks. It doesn't matter. Anything to get involved in the community and give back to the community. That is something that, to my knowledge, Young Americans for Liberty has not been a part of, and they have not stressed that mutual aid aspect. But the Liberty Youth Coalition is different from other libertarian organizations in that we believe that the best way to reach out to the community and to really get the community to listen to you is to give back to the community.
Yeah. Could you talk maybe about some of the other goals of Liberty Youth Coalition in advancing libertarianism? Maybe some sort of like planks or anything that has to do with that?
So we have what we call the Four Foundations. Essentially, we seek to educate the young and the old about the proper approach to economics, about libertarianism in general, individualism. We seek to educate. We hope to do that. We hope to have a curriculum at some point to do that. But right now we are working on pamphlets to be passed around and given out at our campus chapters. And we hope to not only have college campuses do this, but we hope to have these pamphlets passed out at high schools and even middle schools or other forms of or other education institutions. We want to spread the message around educational institutions. We think that colleges, while important, are not all important. It's important to reach the entire audience and not just some of the audience or the audience of a certain age. The quicker that young people, particularly young people, are exposed to these ideas, the better is the way that we approach that. So we believe that education is absolutely essential. but we also believe that restoration is essential. That is our second plank, is restoration. In that the United States was founded on what could be described as libertarian principles, and from the founding of our nation up until the Civil War, and then from the Civil War up until around 1910 and the early 20th century, you could say that the United States was a fairly free market, fairly libertarian nation. Uh, Therefore, we believe that there needs to be a restoration of that mindset in America. And we believe that the United States should have a minimalistic approach to government and a maximalistic approach to liberty. So restoration is a big part of what we want to do. And we want to accomplish this by seizing control of institutions. I guess in layman's language, generally that means to endorse and support candidates that align with our views. But we're not just committed to mutual aid, and we're not just committed to education, and we're not just committed to restoration. But what we are also dedicated to is the idea that libertarians need to be effective in messaging. We believe that libertarianism needs to be effective. And we need effective messengers to propagate our message. And we need a message to be molded in a way that it is not popular, because if it were popular, we would be doing something wrong, but in a way that people understand it, in a way that people can. I want libertarianism, and we at the Liberty Youth Coalition want libertarianism to be something that people can look at and they can hear arguments being made, and they can say, well, I don't fully agree with that, and I don't fully understand that perspective, but I kind of see the point. That if we can get that, if that is where we can go as a movement, if that is where we can go, particularly in the libertarian movement, I feel that we will be doing some serious work. We'll be making some serious progress, because we need to have an effective message. So we're committed to restoration, we're committed to education, we're committed to mutual aid. There is a fourth foundation in our organization that escapes me at the current moment because I don't have any notes. Therefore, I'm not going to say that one. But if you would like to know more about that and you would like to find our fourth foundation, you can go to our website, which I will plug at the end of the show.
Sure. So I was actually going to ask a little bit about why you see a need for a new organization, particularly a student one within the Liberty movement. It feels like you covered quite a bit of the missing areas, but I do actually kind of want to know how this would sort of work out, like what sort of space there is within the already existing campus spheres of liberty for this to fit into it. Like, how would you see this sort of like being adopted within college campuses where there already are other organizations oriented in certain ways similar to this?
I believe that competition in the liberty movement and among liberty organizations is really unnecessary. Although I think that competition is better, in that just as we understand the economic principle of competition, in that competition brings more innovation and encourages entities and people and innovators to work harder and to develop more in trying to outrun their competition. And that is a good thing. I don't believe that competition within the liberty movement between organizations is necessarily beneficial. Well, I won't say that. I won't say that competition isn't beneficial, because it is. What I will say is that negative competition and vitriol-driven competition and this kind of hostile competition is not necessary. And I believe that the more organizations that we have that are promoting these ideas, the better off we are, and the better off everyone will be in the long run. There should not be one or two organizations that are propagating these ideas. We should have 100 organizations propagating these ideas, and let the chips fall where they may, and what organization is the most successful. But if you have a voice And if a group of individuals has a voice and they want to, speak to the masses and they want to propagate this message, then I believe that it is absolutely beneficial, both to them, to their audience, and as well to the other organizations that already exist, for that to happen. I don't believe in hostile competition. I think we are the messengers. It's not our job to be hostile to one another and to compete with one another in a negative way, because at the end of the day, we are all working toward the same goal.
All right. And how soon can college students start an LYC chapter if they so please?
They can do that right now. All they have to do is contact us. You can start an LYC chapter. Our website, which will be available bigger and better form eventually. We will have a tab there. We will have something that you can click that will say start a chapter. You can contact us. You can give us your information. You can tell us where you want to start the chapter, and we can go from there. And you can do that right now.
Sounds great. And I'll be putting that in the description as well. Now, I did want to get more into Mises Magazine. Could you go over exactly what's going on with that and what we can expect from that?
So Mises Magazine is going to be a digital publication. It is going to be essentially a newsletter of sorts, except it will be, obviously subscription-based and not free. So Mises Magazine, I believe, is really different from other magazines, particularly in the liberty movement, because it has this part of it. It has this part of it that is different, because what it is we are going to allow open debate. We're going to allow open debate within the pages of the magazine. The proverbial pages, because it will be digital. So we are going to allow open debate between conservatives, between anarcho-capitalists, between libertarians. And we believe, and I believe, as the chief editor as well as the director, that it is very important to have conversations. And I think we're all better off when we talk about things. We talk about our differences and we try to hash them out in an adult way, of course, and not in a hostile manner. So I believe that it's important that any publication allows for debate and doesn't become an echo chamber. And I can tell you that Mises Magazine will be the exact polar opposite of an echo chamber, because we will allow people with very differing viewpoints to go at each other in a respectful way within the pages of the magazine. And I think that sets us apart from any other publication, especially in the liberty movement.
So I actually did want to ask something about that specifically, because I had heard before there was someone more involved. I won't go too much into the details, but I remember there being a discussion on agorism. And from what I was getting, there's more room for advocacy of counter-economic action, but as opposed to the anti-political aspect of it, which would mean like being more skeptical of getting involved in politics in the first place and advocating for the counter-economic aspect of it instead. So what would you say would be the openness within the magazine for something like that?
Absolutely. Anyone, whether they're a conservative, whether they're an anarchist, whether they're an agorist, is perfectly free to propagate their viewpoint. Now, that is not to say that their viewpoint will not be challenged. Perhaps there will be an editorial. What is it called whenever whenever an author writes a response,
Letter to the editor.
A rebuttal? Yes, perhaps there will be an editorial rebuttal to viewpoints that we don't feel are necessarily within the best interest of the magazine, and maybe people will write articles rebutting articles that have already been written. That is something that we've certainly considered, but we just want open debate. I mean, whatever your viewpoint is, we want you to have at it. We want you to be free to propagate it, but you may face some opposition to your propagation, and you must be prepared for that, because obviously not everyone is going to agree with you. But we want you to be free to say whatever you want to say, as long as it's within reason.
Yeah, I do think that's good, because there are some more or I should say less open libertarian organizations, or I say libertarian organization, but not always, that just aren't as accepting as of discourse, as you're saying that Liberty Youth Coalition and Mises Magazine will be. So it's good to see that. I for sure hope that becomes the status quo, and how that even operates within this organization would be great to see. And I mean, there's not a problem with challenging viewpoints, as long as the viewpoints that are still libertarian are able to be expressed within the magazine, right? So yeah, I would like to know, just in general, what you think needs to be more discussed within the liberty movement right now. This is sort of getting a little bit away, but maybe it might be something you want to see in Mises Magazine, or it just might be something you want to see in general more discussed.
I would like to see more of an emphasis on, especially in relation to social issues. As I think I mentioned briefly before, less of an emphasis on libertine, more of an emphasis on libertarian. And I think too many times libertarian organizations and people within the libertarian movement that mean well damage our message to some extent, because their messaging in relation to social issues is not just, it doesn't stop at government should not be involved in this, but it goes beyond the pale of government should not be involved in this, and it goes into the idea that this is perfectly okay from a moral standpoint. And what I would like to see more discussed within the libertarian movement is there needs to be a distinction between what government should be involved in and what is morally acceptable. Not everything that is morally acceptable, obviously should be morally unacceptable, I should say, should be regulated by government. And I tend to think that most everything that isn't morally acceptable should not be regulated by government. The problem there is not on the emphasis against government regulation and government intervention, which is always good. The problem is whenever you say, well, I don't believe that prostitution should be regulated by the government. Good so far. And then you say, and as a matter of fact, I believe that prostitution is perfectly morally acceptable. And that's when we have a problem, because you're not just being a libertarian. Your rhetoric is actively pushing people away from the movement because you are making arguments that virtually no one agrees with.
Yeah, and that's still not to say that you don't have any sort of controversial takes yourself, or that you shy away from that, because I have looked at your Twitter and exactly. Often I've seen so many debates recently about people asking you like what a state is, and you keep defining it, and you're saying like it's inherently coercive, and they're like, oh, that's not true. And that is such an unpopular view, right? That is something that so many people would say like, this is wrong, you're wrong. There's like, states aren't inherently evil, like they don't have certain incentives that are already there in place that are going to make them always operate a certain way. But here you are saying it anyway. And I mean, you don't mind because it's true. It's just true. Yes. And it's unlike other issues where maybe it's like, okay, maybe I do have a personal preference here, but I'm not going to like go out and say directly like exactly what I think this and that should be in a libertarian society, because I just want the libertarian society. I don't want to like give you a whole plan of exactly what's going to go on here and there, because it's just about the ethics itself. It's not about exactly my personal beliefs.
I am barely capable as a mere human being of running my own life and making my own decisions. Do you think I have the time, the experience, or the expertise, or the wisdom to make your decisions for you? Absolutely not. You can do whatever you want to do. Know that you will probably regret some of the things that you do, and you may face consequences for some of the things that you do. But as far as I'm concerned, you can do whatever you want, because I have way too much to worry about myself than to worry about what you are doing over there. So as long as you are doing what you are doing over there, it does not concern me, and it is not my concern. It's not my problem, and I don't care. That's my viewpoint.
Yeah, again, the social issue thing is very interesting coming from you as well, because you tweeted in the past that basically the government has no right to dictate what a moral society is, because what is a state going to do? It's just going to do what's in its interest as far as expanding itself. So obviously what morals it pushes or dictates are not actually in any sort of sense going to be rational. It's just going to be up to what the state decrees is necessary for its survival.
When we allow the state to dictate what is morally acceptable or to set the moral standards for society, we are not on a slippery slope. We are at the bottom in a black hole. That's my perspective.
Yeah, and it's really good to see that this is the perspective coming from an organization, a new liberty organization, because we don't really see like this sort of in-depth like thought about these things coming from the leadership in these other organizations. And that's not to obviously knock like some of the action that's been taken and some of the progress that's been made, but again, it's more so about like what is the need for new organizations. Well, it has to do with leadership. It has to do with people bringing in fresh ideas and even like correct ideas just to the table and making sure that people are hearing these sorts of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree. I believe there's conversations that are important to have, and everyone is going to have their own opinion, particularly when in relation to issues of morality. I believe that morality is subjective. I believe that everyone is going to have their own opinion on certain issues. My problem is whenever you think that you're so special and you're so precious and your opinion is so special that you believe that the government or the state should force your opinion on everyone else. That's when we have a problem.
Right. So I did want to ask, getting back into it, asking about, sort of the timeline at what we're looking at here for LYC growing and Mises Magazine. So I guess we'll go back to LYC for a second real quick and just ask, since you did say there was going to be a new website for it, when can we expect that, first of all?
Within the next week, we hope.
Nice. And would you want to give that right now, what it is?
Not right now because it's not out yet. Because there's another website. If anyone wants to donate or anyone wants to go there, you can go to libertylyceum.com, which is the current website. That's LYCEUM. But we will have a new website. The old one will be going away. I just don't want to give it out right now because it's not ready. And if people want to donate, they should go to the current website.
Got you. And so how about Mises Magazine? I do want to know what the timeline is on that one and when we can expect a first publication of it.
We are looking at an August launch. Mises Magazine will be part of the website, obviously, for the organization because it is the the quote unquote pet project of the organization. However, there will not be any substance there until we hope August because we have to get everything together. There's a lot that goes into, more than you would think, that goes into publishing a magazine, particularly a newsletter. So there's a lot of things that we still have to do. There's a lot of work still to be done, but we are hard at it, and we are looking at a ballpark August launch for Mises Magazine.
Great. So I do want to know people that are interested in getting involved in that aspect of things, where can they go for that?
Interested in getting involved with Mises Magazine?
Yes.
There isn't a website right now for Mises Magazine, but if you go to libertylyceum.com or you join our Discord server, which you can find all over our Twitter page, you can get involved directly by speaking with us. Let us know your talents, let us know what you're good at, and we can always use someone on the editorial team or any of the other various teams that are working on the magazine. If anybody wants to help, they can join our Discord server. It might be a good idea to link that as well, if you don't mind, to link our Discord server. I can send you that link. But if anyone wants to get involved, they can contact us directly. We believe in direct communication. We don't want, we want people to sign forms and to let us know things in a way, on online. But we also want people to get in contact with us directly. I mean, we don't bite. Reach out to us. You can reach out to me personally. I would give my personal cell phone number, but I would probably get doxxed. So
yeah, maybe.
But if anybody wants that, you can DM me directly and you'll get it.
Sure. Now, one more thing I did want to ask before we wrap up. I just wanted to know about your hope for the future of liberty, and just asking, are you white pilled? Are you black pilled? Like, what's going on here in your mindset of where things are going?
Well, right now, I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't think that we're going to establish. I don't think we're going to elect a libertarian president within the next 25 years. But that is not necessarily to say that there are not things that we can do on the state level, on the local level, on the community level to counteract the central authority. I have mostly given up, or I should say that I have entirely given up on presidential politics and, for the most part, the national scene, because I just think that Washington is irredeemable and deplorable, we might say. Therefore, what we need to do is on the state level and on the local level and on the community level, we need to counteract the central powers. And we need to see an emphasis and a rise of nullification, a great word. Nullification and decentralization is the future of the liberty movement, and it's the future of liberty in general. What we need are nullification on the legislative level, and just in general decentralization and mass noncompliance on the community and the individual level. That is how we advance liberty. I don't see a home for liberty in federal politics.
Noncompliance is number one. I think that's the greatest way you're going to get anything done.
Absolutely. People have to borrow a quote from Nancy Reagan, just say no.
What a great use of that quote. Anyway, it's been great, Ezra. Thank you for joining me. I will be plugging everything you talked about today in the description below, and we'll see what I can include in the comments. I think, one link will probably suffice. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
No, if you want to support the Liberty Youth Coalition and our efforts, and you want to, throw us some money, donate to us, you can do that at www.givesendgo.com/sparkliberty. We always welcome donations. We can use all the money that we can get because it takes money to run an organization. It takes money to build a website. So we definitely welcome donations.
All right. So with that, again, my name is Ahmed Mlih. You can find me on social media at AHMlih, MLIH, or you can check out at Civil Offense on most social medias. Twitter is where I put some of the best stuff up. And remember that civil offense is the key to winning. Thank you.